Nelson Mandela, a name that echoes through the halls of history, was not just a man but a symbol of strength, hope, and forgiveness. His story begins in a small village in South Africa in 1918. From his earliest days, Mandela saw the struggles of his people under the harsh and cruel system of apartheid. The world he was born into was deeply divided by color and class. Yet, even as a young boy, Mandela's heart was filled with dreams of justice and equality. He grew up herding cattle, studying under the trees and listening to the stories of his ancestors, stories about courage, freedom, and the fight for dignity. These stories shaped his soul and built within him a silent determination that one day he would do something meaningful for his people. When Mandela went to college, he studied law. He wanted to understand the system that had chained his people, and he wanted to find a way to fight it using knowledge, not violence. In the city, he saw injustice everywhere. Black people humiliated, families broken apart, and lives destroyed simply because of the color of their skin. He joined groups of young revolutionaries who believed that South Africa could be free. They were dreamers, but their dreams were built on pain. Mandela soon became one of the leading voices against apartheid. He gave powerful speeches that inspired both the poor and the educated. He became the voice of those who had none, but his fight came at a cost. The government called him a terrorist. He was followed, threatened, and eventually arrested. For years, Mandela lived like a hunted man, always on the move, always at risk. Yet he never gave up. He once said, "A winner is a dreamer who never gives up." Those words became the truth of his own life. In 1962, Mandela was captured and sentenced to life imprisonment. The world thought they had silenced him, but they were wrong. Even behind the cold iron bars of Robben Island, Mandela's spirit remained unbroken. For 27 long years, he lived in a tiny cell with a thin blanket and a bucket for a toilet. He worked in the limestone quarry under the burning sun, breaking rocks by hand. But instead of breaking his will, the prison forged his soul into steel. Every day, he read books, he wrote letters, he shared stories with his fellow prisoners. They called him Madiba, a name of respect and love. He became their teacher, their guide, and their moral compass. The guards tried to humiliate him, but he met their cruelty with calm dignity. Mandela believed that hatred only darkens the heart, but forgiveness brings light. Years passed. The world began to see the injustice in South Africa. People from across the globe protested for his freedom. The name Nelson Mandela became a rallying cry for justice. Finally, in 1990, the impossible happened. Mandela was released. When he walked out of prison, his hair had turned gray, but his smile was the same. He raised his hand to the sky, not in anger, but in peace. The crowd cheered, and tears ran down the faces of millions. The man who had spent 27 years in a cell walked out with forgiveness in his heart. 4 years later, in 1994, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. The nation that had once imprisoned him now trusted him to lead. It was more than a political victory. It was a triumph of humanity. As president, Mandela focused on healing a broken nation. He knew that unity could not come through revenge. He reached out to the very people who had once oppressed him. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where victims and perpetrators could speak openly, face their past, and begin to heal. His leadership was gentle yet firm. He preferred to listen rather than command. He often wore simple shirts instead of suits, a symbol that he was one with his people. Mandela once said, "It is better to lead from behind and to put others in front, especially when you celebrate victory." Even after stepping down from politics, Mandela continued to serve humanity. He worked for education, peace, and the fight against HIV/AIDS. He visited schools and hospitals. He inspired leaders and young people everywhere to live with compassion. He believed that education was the most powerful weapon to change the world. And he was right. His foundation continues to help children across Africa even today. Mandela's life reminds us that true power is not in ruling others, but in mastering yourself. He conquered his anger, his pain, and his fear. He transformed suffering into strength and bitterness into wisdom. When he passed away in 2013, the world mourned. But more than sadness, there was gratitude. Gratitude for a man who taught the world that forgiveness is stronger than hate, and love is the only path to freedom. Today, Nelson Mandela's legacy lives on in every person who stands up for justice, in every voice that speaks against racism, and in every act of kindness that bridges the gap between people. His story is not just South Africa's story, it is a human story. Mandela showed us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the victory over it. His life was proof that one man can change the course of history. He turned pain